So we created these waiver release forms. They were fake. But these waiver release forms, we'd show up with them and we'd sign these waiver release forms saying we will not sue under any circumstances. And a lot of times we'd get permission. And the bigger you got in snowboarding and the more well-known you became, you'd start to go to these cities and people would sometimes recognize you. Like we were in North Dakota, Bismarck, North Dakota, 2 a.m. filming at a college, and the cops pull in. And the dude, 2 a.m. Yeah, because we couldn't be there during the day because we would get busted. You know, people would be at these spots. We couldn't be jumping off buildings when people were standing there. So we do it at night. We'd come in with huge lights, and it would be a huge production. But the cop pulls in at 2 a.m. and he gets out of the car and he yells, "Is that Brisse? Brisse, is that you?"
Welcome to Heading West, a not-so-serious podcast where we talk about life, business, real estate, and our personal journeys as we head west. On today's episode, we have Dan Brisse, co-founder of Granite Towers Equity Group and former two-time X Games gold medalist. Steve, I don't even know how we get X Games gold medalists on this show.
Jake, that was one of the greatest shows I've listened to and been a part of. I heard about 2 a.m. snowboarding and video recording in cities. Yep. I heard about fishing. I heard about books. I heard about his dreams, and I heard about someone who got him moving in the direction he wanted to go. Folks, you've got to get your seatbelt on for this one.
Yeah. I don't want to tease this one out at all. So let's just head west.
Yeah, it'll be a great show.
Well, stay tuned as we discuss life as an X Games gold medalist, how desire is the foundation for success, and how one book changed the direction of his life with our guest, Dan Brisse. I was telling Steve before you got on here, I grew up watching X Games. My family's in Colorado. I grew up in California. You know, we used to ski Mammoth and Big Bear and whatnot. So I grew up watching X Games. I'd love to hear how did you go from a small town kid in Minnesota who picks up snowboarding and ends up a two-time X Games gold medalist, undoubtedly one of the best snowboarders in the world at the time. What's that journey like? I started at 15 snowboarding. I'm nowhere even remotely close to where you are in talent. So kind of explain that story.
Yeah. I was always very, very into sports, very into athletics. And I came across snowboarding from my cousin. At the time, snowboarding was a young sport. It wasn't super popular yet. And his friend from California brought a snowboard. California was kind of the place where snowboarding really got going. And we ended up riding in his backyard. I was 11 or 12 years old. And just for some reason, it was just so fun. It was just my perfect sport, I guess. You know, I wasn't always that great of a team player, I guess, when it came to football and soccer when I was younger. I don't know why, but snowboarding was something you could do on your own and it wasn't dependent on anybody else. And you could go fast, you could hit jumps, and it just was that perfect thing. And so I started just riding as much as I could. And I got a snowboard from working all summer. I spent the summer, I decided that year, I was like, I'm going to spend all summer working to buy my own snowboard and a season pass. And I ended up doing that for a summer, bought a season pass the next year, and just started riding with my friends. And I didn't really have the goal of trying to be a pro snowboarder at the time. It was just something we would love to do. And, you know, after 3-4 years of doing that and just being a kid in Minnesota, I started to get a little bit better than everybody. And I started to get better than my brother. And that was kind of a moment where I was like, holy shit, I just got better than my brother. He's older. Yeah. And so once that happened and I started getting better than my friends and his friends, and, you know, I could see, I was like, man, it's coming naturally. And it was just in my element. It was so much fun. My parents would drop me off at 9 a.m. and they'd come back and pick me up at 9 p.m. And the time would like fly by. And I was like, dang, I'm not ready to be done. And it's 12 hours of snowboarding.
Yeah.
And that happened for 2 or 3 years. And finally, I started to see snowboarding videos and got the idea that there's other guys who grew up in Minnesota who moved out west and became pro snowboarders that were a little older than me. And the idea just started to permeate that, hey, maybe it's possible. And so from, 11 to 15, it was just snowboarding with my friends, but kind of at the 14, 15-year-old range, it kind of something flipped. where I'm like, I'm doing this. This is what I'm going to do. This is my
Yeah.
focus. This is my passion. And I'm going to just chase this dream. And I know that others have done it. So I'm going to try to follow it too. So that was kind of the beginning of like never hearing of snowboarding, no idea what the hell it is, to this is what I want to do and I'm going to go all out at it. So at that first 3-4 years was really just about fun. And then it turned into more of like it was still fun, but it was more of like, there's a very clear goal and
Yeah.
it's very serious. You know, I ended up really, really liking a girl in 9th grade, first girl I really liked. And I liked her so much that it scared me that I wasn't going to be willing to commit to my snowboarding career that I was focused on. So I broke up with her, you know, after being with her for a year, because I knew I was going to move out west and I knew that it might affect where I was headed. And, you know, thinking back, like that's kind of a unique move. You're young and your first girlfriend you really like, and you're that committed at that age to, you know, chase this snowboarding career. So, but yeah, 15, 16, 17, snowboarded a bunch more. My senior year of high school, I moved out to Vail, Colorado. There was a family that I knew in Minnesota. They allowed me to live with them, and I finished school part-time there. Came back, I graduated with my high school class, worked all summer. The next winter moved to Salt Lake City, and I went to Salt Lake City, Utah, which is, if you want to be a pro snowboarder, you move to Salt Lake City. It's kind of like if you want to be an actor, you go to Hollywood.
Sure.
If you want to be a snowboarder, you go to Salt Lake City. And I spent a good 4 or 5 years there just grinding, working at night, snowboarding every day. And after being there for 3 or 4 years, I could kind of get the sense that I'm at a position where I could win at some of these contests. I knew what everybody was doing. I could see all the top riders. I'd watch all the contests on TV. And what actually ended up happening is after X Games X Games plays out every year in Aspen, Colorado. And after X Games is done, they have the Aspen Open, which allows anyone, just like the US Open in golf, anyone in the country can just show up, pay $250 and can compete. And at the time I was so broke, I couldn't get there. But my friend who was in Salt Lake City with me, his name's Mike Pettit, the gentleman was with me. He says, Dan, you're good enough. You got to compete. I'm like, I would love to do, but I don't got the money to drive there. I'm not going to get a hotel. I'm not going to pay the entry fee. And he'd paid for it all. He threw me in his car. Wow. We drove overnight to Aspen, Colorado. He put me up in a room. He put me in the contest, and I ended up making finals. You had to first compete just to get to finals. Yeah, which was 30 people. There were 275 riders from all over the country, and 30 of the dudes get to go to the finals. And I made it to the finals, and in the finals, I won. I won the contest, and that was the beginning.
Amazing.
Yeah, it was. That was the beginning of my career, and I remember just thinking back. I won $2,500. It was a lot of money. It really was. But at the time, I would work all summer, and I'd make like $4,000 or $5,000. And I'd work for my dad, and I'd work, these odd jobs. So I was like, shit, that was amazing. It was kind of the launch, and that was when other brands started to take note, because as you're coming up when you're young, if you win at a contest like that, you'll get more recognition from the brands that you're riding for. So that's when I started to get more phone calls and more help from companies to fly all over the country and start getting in front of like professional shoots. So that was really it. I mean, from nothing to that was the progression.
And so from that first event where you took the finals, were you able to then dedicate all of your time to honing your craft, or did you still have to continue to work in order to make ends meet, in order to fund it?
Yeah, snowboarding is not like football, basketball, baseball. You're not making tens of millions of dollars, and if you're lucky, you'll clear $1 million if you're doing very good at the peak of your career. So, for the first probably year and a half, I still had some part-time jobs. Maybe not quite that long, but after that year, I was fully focused on snowboarding, and there was no part-time work. It was 100% a career.
Yeah. Where were you based out of? Did you stay in Salt Lake and ski Park City? Okay.
Yep. Yeah, I stayed in Salt Lake City. I'd ride Park City, Snowbird. All of those resorts were so great for what we were doing in snowboarding. And there was a lot of other athletes that were in that local market that were trying to come up. And there were a lot of filmers and photographers. So a big part of what we did was filming video parts. It actually was the main portion of my career. And when you were saying, how did you get to X Games? Year after year, you'd be making these video parts, and these videos would be like filmed videos. Like a lot of probably listeners would be Warren Miller style, but these snowboard videos would be created year after year, and they'd be, sold all over the country and all over the world in snowboarding and skateboarding shops. and we would film these videos. And after 3, 4, 5 years, you started to be kind of known in the sport for what you were kind of specialty good at. And growing up in Minnesota, we had a lot of urban riding, and that's what we spent most of our time on. So I kind of had this niche in urban riding, and I had this ability of kind of going big. If you look at footage of what we did, we hit the biggest features, and it was the gnarliest stuff. And I kind of got the reputation of being the dude who's the gnarliest. It's great stuff, which is true. I love going big. I'm not going to lie. It was kind of what got me excited. And so X Games comes out with this new event called Real. It's a Real series, Real Street for skateboarding, Real Dirt, Real Moto for dirt biking, Real Snow for snowboarding, and then Real Wake for wakeboarding. And I was obviously a snowboarder at the time, and urban was what they brought in first. So I was one of the first set of guys to be invited to go into Real Snow, which was in 2011, 2012, which was right at the peak of where I was hitting the biggest stuff and just kind of on my game. So that's how I got invited to that, and ended up winning 2 back-to-back gold medals and then 2 silver medals after that. So it was a great run.
That's incredible. So with Real Snow, is it your skiing or boarding urban, finding the most gnarly, whatever, buildings to transfer onto a rail, whatever, and then you're recording it and putting the best film reel together?
Yeah, exactly right. You go out with a filmer and photographer, and you're basically driving around the country. You go anywhere you want in the world, and you show up and you start to, film on urban features that are enticing to you as the rider. The rider's really picking it out. You're never having anybody decide what you're doing. It was always my decision of what we were hitting, just because it was risky. It was very dangerous. If you have any video, you could show it along with this, what we're talking about. But YouTube, if you go to YouTube, X Games by name, you'll be able to find some updated some video. But it was just us cruising around, and the budget was paid for by our brands, and it was just go and make a video part. It was a unique time. A lot of times we'd go to these spots, and they were, you couldn't just show up and snowboard on these businesses, right? These guys are like, get out of here. You're going to kill yourself and sue me. So we created these waiver release forms. They were fake. But these waiver release forms, we'd show up with them, and we'd sign these waiver release forms saying we will not sue under any circumstances. And a lot of times we'd get permission. And the bigger you got in snowboarding and the more well-known you became, you'd start to go to these cities, and people would sometimes recognize you. Like, we were in North Dakota, Bismarck, North Dakota, 2 a.m. filming at a college. And the cops pull in, and the dude, 2 a.m. Yeah, because we couldn't be there during the day because we would get busted. People would be at these spots. We couldn't be jumping off buildings when people were standing there. So we do it at night. We'd come in with huge lights, and it would be a huge production. But the cop pulls in at 2 a.m. and he gets out of the car and he yells, "Is that Brisse? Brisse, is that you?" And I'm like, "Dude, are these guys looking for me?" And he's like, "Oh my God, I can't believe you're here." So that didn't happen a lot, but it happened more and more as we would get further along, that these guys would actually, you'd go to cities and they would know who you were. They'd look you up online and they would be excited you were there. So it got easier as you got a little bigger.
The police start roping off an area for you instead of putting you back in their car.
That's right. I mean, I never got ticketed. I never got cuffed, but none of that. But there were plenty of times where they were like, "You guys got to get out of here. This is not going to fly." Yeah.
That's how you know you've made it. When 2 a.m. someone recognized you in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, it was great. It was a good story.
Yeah. I think the last stunt or a trick I saw of yours was off the top of a church steeple onto it looked like just a little lip of a snow. I'll call it a bump. It didn't even look like a place to land, but off the top of the steeple into the snow. And I cannot believe you even attempted that.
Yeah, I look back now at some of the stuff we did, and I just wouldn't ever do those things anymore. And I was just in a different place. It was a different time in my life. It was before I had kids. Even when I had Zealand, once my 9-year-old was born, he's 9 now, but when he was born, I still remember we were up in Fairbanks, Alaska, filming for my last Real Snow part for X Games 2018. And I was pulling the rope back. It was, again, 2 a.m, dark. We were out there with the Bobcat, everything's set up, lights are going, filmers, photographers all flew in from the US, from down here in the States, and we're shooting. It's just me. I mean, when you're doing real snow, you're not always riding with a bunch of people. So the pressure's it's really on you. They're just staring like, are you going to hit this? What do you want to do next?
Yeah.
It's a little bit intense, but I was pulling the rope back after hitting the spot, probably like the 50th try, which we can talk a little bit about that too. Just the amount of failure and amount of get up you have to be a snowboarder. But I'm pulling the rope back and I'm just thinking in my head, I'm like, this just isn't for me anymore. And it was a moment where I still remember where I was. And at that time, I was already committed to my part for 2018. So I'm not going to quit. I'm not going to just be like, oh, I'm done. So I finished that part. And that was really the beginning of the end. It was just I had a couple of moments where I fell, and it could have been really nasty. And I was just thinking, it's just not worth it anymore. It's been fun and it's been great, but things have changed.
And Dan, how old were you when that thought came to, you know what, maybe it's time for me to hang up the snowboard, as they say?
Yeah, I was 31, 32 years old.
Yeah. Wow. That's really interesting. You say it sort of flipped. Like there was a moment where you said, this is not for me anymore. How did you distinguish between a fleeting emotion? Like you did it 50 times, you said. You could have easily been like, all right, I'm done for the day. I'm exhausted. This thing hasn't worked out. I'm just not feeling it. How did you distinguish that feeling with, I'm just done with this overall? Because I think that's difficult for people to know the difference between the two, and they end up making bad decisions because they can't.
Yep. Great question. I could feel it in my heart. I could just tell that there just was a change, and it was deep. It wasn't like dang, this is frustrating. This isn't working out. I'm going to call it for the day. It was a much more like core feeling of like, damn, what if I had something go south here? Because it happens sometimes. A lot of snowboarders go up to Alaska, they get buried in an avalanche and they die. Or you have something dramatic happen where you're in a wheelchair and things can change quickly. And so I don't know, it was just a deep feeling. And I would say I started to have creeping thoughts of it, but it was that specific session where I slipped out on the jump, and I was going up a kicker and I was landing on a rail that was really high, and I almost slipped out and would have slammed right into it, and my back would have gotten messed up. And so, something just changed, and I could just tell it wasn't what it used to be.
Yeah. Did you have a sense of what you wanted to do when that time came after?
Yeah, that's the best. If there's any athlete that's listening, if anyone's listened that's an athlete, I wish I could speak to more of them that are in the middle of their career, to let them know that it's going to come to an end. And unless you're LeBron James or Michael Jordan, where you're going to have a brand, or you're so wealthy, you just can make any decisions afterward. But the majority of athletes aren't in a position where they're going to retire at 30 and just have plenty of money for the rest of their life, or have anything that they're interested in. I mean, the boredom that's going to set in from 30 to 70. I mean, I would be so bummed if I didn't have something. So yeah, there was a 5-year period while my career was winding down that I started to get into real estate, just investing the money that I was making, on my own time, on my own dollar, and just putting it into cash flowing real estate. Everyone's read the book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Cash Flow Quadrant. But after reading those books, I realized that the money I was making was in the S quadrant. I was self-employed, and my tax bill was the highest out of anyone. And if I stopped writing, I stopped getting paid. And it was 100% on my income and my income alone. And it kind of, after reading those books, that would be another thing that started to make me wonder, why am I snowboarding so heavily? As much as I loved it and the passion was there, once the passion wasn't there and it was for the money, it wasn't as exciting. It wasn't as critical. So yeah, I started investing, and that was kind of the exit for me. Was I knew that when it wound down, I was going to, move into full-time real estate investing.
Dan, when you moved into full-time real estate investing, did you buy single-family homes? Was that your first approach? Can you tell us about that and how that worked out for you?
Yeah, definitely. No, I knew I wanted to try to buy multifamily deals, in the sense that my goal was passive income. And there were a couple things that stood out. Was just you having more than one tenant paying was huge. So I bought a 9-unit deal, a small 9-unit deal up here in Chehalis, Washington, for $260,000, and I put all the money down, and the deal did incredibly well, and it was an awesome little deal. But that was the moment where I was like, gosh, you can put 75, $100,000, a little bit of money in these deals, and they can start to pay you monthly. You have this loan pay down for that. There was no, interest only. It was being paid off slowly by the tenant. The value was going up because the dollars continue to be destroyed. There's some basic fundamentals that I, think I understood, and I think a lot of people are understanding with the dollar. And so it was just a 9-unit deal. And it was, I hired a third party management company that I talked to, every few days on my own during my career. And then I bought a duplex after that. And then I bought a 24-unit deal after that. And those 3 deals were the foundation of kind of, I guess, diving in. And if I could go back, if I could do it again, I would have got much deeper training at a higher level before buying the deals. But luckily I bought at a time where you couldn't really have screwed it up. It was 2012. We were just coming out of the Great Recession. And if you were in any markets that had any sort of runway, you did well. So I got really lucky with that piece.
Yeah. Where did you get that training for you initially?
For me, it was just all self-education. I started reading every book I could find. I started listening to every podcast I could get on. I went to Michael Blanc's website and got down his analyzer and just started analyzing deals on my own and putting it together on my own. And just self-education. I was flying all over the country looking for seminars. I would, go to 3-4 day seminars that were all really great seminars, but they weren't in depth enough to really be raising capital professionally.
Hey, Dan, when you started off, normally you see people when they jump into real estate, their first thing is a single family home. They don't buy a duplex. They don't buy a quadplex or a fourplex. They buy a single family home. Why didn't you go that route?
Yeah. It was the multiple tenants. It was having more doors and more income from multiple people. And I thought it would give me more passive income quicker. My goal, and still my goal, and really my only goal, is to increase my passive income. I have on my phone here MPI, right? Right here. Let me see if I can show it to you. I don't know if it'll show or not. MPI, which stands for massive passive income. And I love passive income in the sense that it just creates this freedom. You're able to do what you want to do. And the MPI, it's pretty,
love that.
Very, very artistic, as you can see. But just passive income allows you to be free. And I think that's really the goal is to be able to get up and just live life on your own terms, and to be able to do what I want to do while I'm here. And I think you can do a lot to help people along the way too. For example, my parents, now that we're raising capital and bringing investors along with us, a lot of times I have really good friends and family that are investing with us. And I just feel so grateful and so proud and good when we send them these cash flow checks.
Yeah. Being able to help out, help them find freedom, whatever their freedom looks like. If it's
That's it.
Income,
my dad was like, gosh, I've invested in these investments for so many years. They're late 70s now. And they're starting to get these cash flow checks. And they're just like, gosh, where was this 20 years ago? So
yeah. You should have had me earlier. I would have told you earlier. What was it about the Rich Dad Poor Dad book? Because I find it so interesting that there's usually 2 books that people refer to in business that flip it for them, and that's Think and Grow Rich and Rich Dad Poor Dad. What was it about Rich Dad that did it for you?
Yeah, it was the simplicity. It was so simple to understand. It wasn't this complex, idea of how you get wealthy. It was very simple, and I like things simple. I'm a very C student, I guess you could say. And when it gets complicated, it's over my head. I'm tuned out. Where when he talked, he's like, I'm a C student. I'm like, I can relate to that guy. I read about Ken McElroy being a C student on his Ferrari. He has C student. I'm like, I can relate to that guy. And I just, between Ken McElroy and Robert Kiyosaki, they became kind of my new heroes. Snowboarding, I had these idols, and now I've got these guys. And, Robert's he's a little bit extreme now, but Ken McElroy is still someone who I really, really look up to and admire, and I love listening to all his content.
That's awesome.
Did you have go ahead, Steve?
No, Dan, and currently with Kiyosaki and McElroy, and there's a lot of people out there that they can get information from, and some are new, some are older. Do you have any advice for people when they're thinking about jumping into real estate? Would you say those 2 guys, or who else would you be thinking about to get involved with?
That's a great question. I think that's a question of who do you listen to these days? And that's a very, very, very serious question to take into consideration, because information that's not going to get you the results is devastating. And I think the biggest thing that I did for my snowboarding career, and now I'm doing with my real estate investing career, is finding people who already have the results, who have already done it, and ideally have done it over a long period of time. I know Ken McElroy's been around for years, so when he talks, I listen. I've been part of Brad Summernock's group out of Dallas. I think he's got really great information, and he's been super helpful to understand the business at a deeper level. He's got a longer track record. He's been almost 2 decades there. For me, it's just does the person have the results? I really like Charlie Young out of Madeira. I've been closer with him, and it's a smaller group than it used to be. It used to be a variety of a ton of podcasts and a ton of different books and a ton of different seminars. Now there's 3-4 people that I really kind of stick to, and just stay very associated with other people who are in the middle of doing it now and have been doing it for a long period of time that I have a lot of respect for.
It's amazing. Let me real quick here. It's amazing what Dan is saying, folks, is that if you want to get somewhere, look to where you want to be, who's ahead of you, who can you emulate going forward. Dan, when you look for somebody, how far out did you want that person to be in their career compared to where you wanted to go? How far did you look out for that person?
Yep. I looked that's such a good question too. I looked at where I wanted to be, the end goal. So when I was looking at pro snowboarding, I was looking at the top guys. I was watching the top dudes, and I was seeing where are they, what are they doing now, and where will they be in 5 years? So you have to kind of see where they're at and start to, as you go further into the business or into your career, you'll start to get more information and be able to see the future actually, because you have a lot of information put together. So really it's seeing the guys that you got to have a goal, I think, of where you'd like to go. What is your end goal, or at least your end goal for now, look like? Because that may always change. At least it always has for me. But what does that end goal look like, and who has it? And then associate with them, and I think a really great book that anyone could read, because a lot of times people are like, well, how do you associate with these people? I don't know them. I don't have any, connections. There's a really great book out called, I'm drawing a blank on it right now. Hold on. How to Win Friends and Influence People. And this book is so great in the sense that it can help you build a personality that people really love to be around. And one thing I've noticed for sure is if I'm around somebody who I enjoy being around and is a delight to be with, I'm much more eager to help and want to assist. And there's been a lot of snowboarders who, during my career, I luckily was able to be one of the top dudes. I had a lot of younger kids who wanted to come up the ranks, and there were very few where I was like, I really like this kid enough where I'm eager and willing to spend some time with them. So I think a big part of anything is create a personality people enjoy being around. And if you can do that, you've got so much more wind at your back as you start to associate with the people that you need to be associating with.
Where do you want to end up? You talked about you to Steve's question, you looked to people who are at the end of their road. What was the path they took? I want to be there. What does that look like for you?
It's a tough question. Right now, it's a passive income goal per month of income. That number, I don't know if it'll change or not. And what to do with the money exactly, I think it'll change as well as I get older. I think it'll be more about philanthropy. Steve, you talk about that a lot, and I admire that a lot. And I think that's where the direction it'll definitely go, because at some point, do you need another house? Do you need another car? Really? I don't think that'll be what will excite you or really motivate you. So for me, it's a passive income goal first and foremost. And then from there, we'll see. Really a big part of it too. And this is a big thing Steve's actually you mentioned is I love the process. I'm curious to see how far we can go, and yeah, there's going to be some heading west issues, and we're dealing with them here and there, and they come up, but we have a good 20-25 year run, my business partner and I, Mike, and I'm curious just to see what we can do with it. And where that ends up, I guess we'll see. It's just year by year, we take what's coming and adjust as needed.
Oh, that's brilliant. I want to circle back on one thing before we wrap up. When we were chatting previously, you had said something that caught my attention. You were saying that desire is the foundation for all accomplishment. Can you expand on that? Can you kind of break that down?
Yeah, I think the one thing, if there was one thing, you read Think and Grow Rich, and they talk about desire is the number one thing, because Napoleon Hill studied the 500 wealthiest people for a 25-year period and wrote this book. And so that book has a lot of weight in my mind of how people have become successful. And I think that book could be Think and Grow to be an athlete, Think and Grow, become a golfer, Think and Grow, become a real estate investor. I think it could be anything, because these principles that he talks about are really the foundation, I think, of making anything happen for you. But the number one piece that stood out to me, and I read that book, was desire. Because when I first found my snowboarding career, it wasn't like one day I found snowboarding, the next day I had a burning desire to be a pro snowboarder. That was built over a period of time, over months and years of thinking a certain way and taking certain actions. And I didn't know what I was doing then, but I accidentally built a burning desire. And you'll have a burning desire when you're willing to do whatever it takes for as long as it takes. And that's the only thing you care about. So I think if you can build that desire, which can happen over a period of time by doing selective things, some things that help you build a desire is pick a clear goal of something that you'd like. And you don't have to ask, how's this going to work? That's the other question I got all the time when I was younger. Oh, how are you going to do that, Dan? How are you going to be a pro snowboarder growing up in Minnesota? And I was like, I don't know how. but what I can tell you is I'm going to go this direction and I'm going to figure it out, kind of like heading west. So, for if you have a goal of something you want to do, just start to take steps that direction and start going that direction. And as you do it, your desire, if you're having a really great time and it's your thing, your desire will slowly increase through repetition of thought and repetition of action. And as you ramp that up, you will change. And because when I was younger, I didn't know what I was willing to do to become a pro snowboarder. And I didn't know what that would feel like until I started to get there. But once you're there, it's this like burning feeling of focus and energy. And you'll have this emulation of energy that people will feel, and you will attract people to what you're doing just based off of how you feel. So sure. I think that's the foundation of any major accomplishment. Is first, you have to have that desire, that motivation, that focus. And over a long period of time, it can be built by daily action towards it and daily repetition of specific thoughts.
Hey, Dan. Yeah, Dan, when you decided to get out of snowboarding and you were at the pinnacle of your snowboarding career, if you turned around and looked at the Dan Brisse who was just starting out and you saw him from afar, what would you tell him?
I'd be like, dude, you better want it bad. You better be ready to go all in, and it is going to be tough. Just telling you right now. Get ready, strap up. It's not going to be easy. You're going to go through some serious setback. Man, I think when you say that, Steve, I was on my way up in my career, and at 21, I was still not making it. I moved to Salt Lake City. I fell and I dislocated my kneecap, and I broke my kneecap, and I tore my cartilage. And that was the point where if I wasn't 100% committed, I would have went back to Minnesota and I probably would have gone to college, or I would have started a new career. But I was, you're committed when something like that happens and you're just focused on getting back to where you're going. You never lose the focus. And I moved to California that year with my brother because I didn't want to go back to Minnesota and get a bunch of feedback from all of the people who said, "Hi, I told you so. You're 21. You just broke your knee for a whole year. You had knee surgery, a major injury before my career even took off." And ended up, going through a major reconstruction surgery and had a year of biking. And then came back and my career took off. But just be ready to put in the work, and it should be fun. You should enjoy the process. That's the other piece. And I think if you're in your, following your passion and you're following your strength zone, you'll know, you'll feel it.
Are you a changed person from being on that journey from way back when you started?
Yeah, I think the Dan I was before I was a snowboarder didn't understand pushing myself or having a focus to the level of becoming a top athlete at a specific craft or whatever that sport is. So yeah, definitely you totally change. And I think that some of those habits of success can come along with you into your next and your next and your next all through life. And I'm sure, Steve, you can relate to that, being an Ironman guy and in golf now, and just the stuff you've done. You'll have to have a level of focus and some habits that will go with you to achieve these goals.
That's awesome. Thanks, Dan.
I think it's super interesting that it didn't take, but it was on the heels of you hurting your knee that breakthrough came. And it's funny, we've been talking about Napoleon Hill, because if I remember correctly, in part of that book, he talks about a gold miner, keeps going. I think he dies or he gives up. I can't remember, but it was only just after he gave up or couldn't keep doing it that gold was found.
Yeah.
And
yeah, I agree. And the other thing that I don't know why it came to mind, but if you're a parent, be so cautious with your kids about telling them what they can and can't do. I had the best parents ever who had just said, you can do it. Go for it. If it doesn't work out, you're young, try something else. And that was huge too, because if I didn't have my parents' support and they didn't have them behind me, I think I would have probably quit early too. I wouldn't have had, and my parents did tell me my whole life growing up, Daniel, just do what you love. We didn't. My dad wanted to be a football player so bad. He was in high school football. He was the best. He wanted to go to college for it. He had this huge opportunity and he just didn't do it. And so growing up, I always heard it, do what you love, do what you love. Just whatever you do, just do what you love. And man, it just drilled into my brain. And, the idea of, is it possible, wasn't really there. It's just, are you going to go all the way or are you not? It's more of a decision of how bad you want it again, back to your desire.
It sounds like some fishing rods are going to replace some snowboards.
Let's go.
Let's go. Are we going to see your son in the Bassmasters tournaments coming up in the Ozarks or what?
Hey, whatever makes him happy. I'm trying to figure out how to parent as well as my parents parented me. I feel like I had the best parents, and I'm just like, am I doing the right thing, saying the right thing? Am I pushing them too hard? So I'm going to just stay connected with my parents and other people who've raised great kids. That comes back to, hey, who's raised great kids and associate with them and communicate with them and ask them, how do they do it? Sometimes you need that help.
Yeah. I had a mentor once say when we had kids, he told us, he goes, the only advice I'll ever give you is lots of love, lots of discipline, but consistency throughout. And that's easier said than done. But I look at his kids and they are model teenagers. They just went off to college and they're what you want as a parent. So I've always tried to hold that to be true. So much love, so much discipline, but consistency throughout.
I love it. I love that. I appreciate that.
And raising kids are a journey. It's ups and downs. And we can all laugh and cry about that. It's not easy being a parent.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Well, Dan, we typically end our time together with a speed round of questions, just 7 questions. They're super simple. So I'm just going to speed through them for you. It's a way for everybody listening to get to know you a little bit better. So number 1, do you have any daily rituals that you swear by?
I have had some that have come and gone, so I can't say no or yes to that. I'd say the one that I am most interested in is just daily exercise, just getting some sort of exercise. And if I don't do that, I end up having a difficulty throughout the day, it feels like.
Yeah, that's good. What's one item you could not live without?
Gosh, an item I couldn't live without. These are tough questions.
I'm sorry.
No, that's all right. I couldn't live without an item, like a thing.
A thing. Yeah, your family goes without saying. So,
I mean, it sounds bad, but my phone, because the business is so connected to it.
There you go. Yeah, you need to be reminded of MPI every time you pick it up.
That's it.
What's one business you wish you could go back and start or invest in?
Bitcoin.
Amen. Boy, did I miss that train. What's one piece of real estate advice you'd give to others?
Get educated by somebody who has the results and who's done it for a long period of time.
Mm-hmm. What's one thing in life, business, or real estate that you're really excited about?
Just the potential of how far you can go. There's no limit.
Absolutely. All right. In what situations do you find you're most happy or fulfilled?
Just having the freedom to get up and make decisions of what we want to do with our day-to-day basis and have the freedom of time.
All right. Last but not least, as you head west, Dan, where do you hope to end up?
I hope to end up at a place when things wind down that I feel like I did what I needed to do.
Love it.
Instead
All right.
Instead what I needed to say. Yeah.
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah. Sorry, and ironically jumped right in the middle of that sentence, and then you followed up with "say what I need to say."
Yeah. I don't know why it choked me up, but yes.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I imagine. I mean, when I think about this question, I think about my kids. I think about the impact I'm making, and so you think about your wife, and there's just so many things go through your head.
Yeah.
Where you want to end up in life.
If you guys get time, you should check out the show Life After Death on Netflix. It's about this gentleman who can connect with people in the afterlife. It's been incredible to watch and listen. I know some people will be like, "Oh, that sounds crazy," but man, it is so intriguing. My mom's all about that stuff, so I kind of bit it, but it is really, really interesting.
Okay, I'll check it out.
Yeah.
We've got a long flight coming up here soon, so I'll just binge it.
I love it.
All right, Dan, last but not least, where can people find you? What do you want to leave them with?
Yeah, you guys can reach out to us at granitetowersequitygroup.com. Contact us, and we can hop on a call or connect via email.
Yeah, and you got a podcast.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, you can all tune into our podcast. Yeah, Keeping It Real Estate on Apple iTunes, Keeping It Real Estate. Mike and I have a podcast where we talk all things real estate. So if you're looking for some education, we have it all there. So yeah, tune in there, or again, www.granitetowersequitygroup.com. Contact us.
Love it. Well, Dan, thank you so much. It was a pleasure getting to chat with you, and this was time well spent.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate you guys.
Dan, it's been a blast, and good job heading west.
Thanks, Navity.